Hi there folks, back for another video. This time around, as you can see by the title on the screen, we're going to be looking at some alternative Middle-earth miniatures if you want to start playing games set in Middle-earth, but you don't fancy picking up the miniatures from Games Workshop. Mostly because, a lot of the time, you can't get a hold of a lot of the stuff. Even though eBay does tend to have a fair amount on there. But, you know, this is a nice set of alternatives to choose from. The first set of alternatives are actually from a war game that has very much got like kind of that Tolkien vibe going on with it. The collection that we're looking at here is from the folks at North Star Military Figures for the game of Oathmark. Now, as you might have guessed, Oathmark is a rather large fantasy mass battle game, but the miniatures that they do for the game I think are really good as alternatives for you to use when it comes to diving in to play Middle-earth on the tabletop. One of the main things that's really good about their range is that it's all in plastic for the most part, although there are a couple of metal characters here and there when you go into the character section. Here you go, for example. There you go. Although, of course, you've got lots more of them when you dive into each of the different character packs. You can see lots of different characters there, lots of different hero models and all sorts of different things like that. But we'll have a look at those in a little bit more detail in a bit. I just wanted to show off the aesthetic of the different miniatures that they have in the range, so you can get an idea of the kind of models that you could use to make armies. So, say you were going to be making a human army, whether or not it was going to be Gondor or Rohan, maybe you want to go with the Oathmark humans. I reckon that the square shields that they've got on most of the models here are great if you're going to be trying to do Gondorians. I think what you do is you try and give them as many helmeted heads as possible, I think. But then the actual garb and look of them, I think, is very in keeping with that kind of late Dark Ages to early Middle Ages look that you tend to get with a lot of Tolkien's artwork that you see, and also the way that it's sort of drawn from the viewpoint of a lot of different artists out there in the world. So keeping the square shields and some helmeted heads would probably work quite nicely for those people wanting to make Gondorians. And then you could use circular shields if you wanted to, and obviously use a few more of the mounted figures if you were going to try and make a Rohan or Rohirrim warband or army on the tabletop. Here's just a couple more of the different human figures. There you can see them all with their swords and shields and other hand weapons. You've got bows as well at the back. And then you have options to give them spears at the same time too, which is pretty cool. The nice thing about these as well is that when you buy the packs, they come with like 30 models in a set, which is pretty awesome. So let's, for example, go to the Dwarf Infantry, which is probably going to be one of the sets you're going to be using. Yep, so 30 plastic bases, so you've got 30 models in that set, which is pretty awesome. And you can give them a range of different weapons, from hand weapons through to spears and bows and all sorts of different things like that. So if you're going to be making a warband or a much larger army, you have the option to do that, which I think is really quite nice with this kind of set. You'll notice, as I say, you've got some elves here as well. This is one of the slightly more newer units. This is your sort of elven rangers, but they've come with swords and shields and spears and bows, of course, as well, as you might have imagined. And I think, again, the elves do a really nice job of sort of capturing that essence and look of Middle-earth. Maybe not some of their first releases, although I think these work quite nicely as sort of like your elves of Rivendell, so sort of Elrond's elves and that kind of thing. And then I think this set sort of makes it feel a little bit more Mirkwoody, a little bit more Lothlorien, I think, if you're going down that route. But they could easily be used as models in a high elf army as well, a Noldor or Sylvan, depending on how you wanted to approach it. They also have a normal regiment of elves with armour on as well, if you wanted to go down that route, which is quite nice. But it's a really nice little set of miniatures there. I wanted to go back to these as well, because obviously I took out these pictures for a reason. So that's someone who's used the Miners kit and the Dwarf Warriors kit, I think, to make Thorin's company. So there's Thorin at the front with his hood and everything, and then he's got a sword from the High Elf kit bolted onto the side of him, so the kind of like kit bashing works really nicely with these. And then you've got a whole bunch of others painted up in the same style as the rest of the company that went with Thorin on the march to Erebor, which is kind of cool. And there you go, there's some more of the dwarves, because I do love the dwarves. They are a really good range. as a whole. As well as that, you've also got the sort of evil folks as well. So while not strictly evil, I guess, let's go for these first. You've got your sort of strange, the undead, I guess you say, of your Middle-earth world, if you wanted to, also from the Oathmark range. The undead, the revenants here, you see, I think these are fantastic for those who want to try and make the army of the dead for use in the last sort of moments of the Return of the King book, and obviously the movie and everything as well. I think the look of them is really nice, and they're done in such a way that they look like the sort of barrow-driven creatures and characters that have risen up to fight once more for their kingdom and all that kind of thing. You've got normal skeleton infantry as well if you want to use those, which is kind of nice. But I think in general it's a really nice set of miniatures that could be used to represent the sort of the undead warriors rising from their graves, either for good or ill, I think, which is quite nice. You've also got your goblins as well. They haven't done orcs, although they are on the horizon, but the goblins could be used to pretty much work as both, I would say, in the game. So you have your standard goblin champions, as you can see here. All of them would work as orcs or goblins, I reckon. They're much of the muchness when it comes to the world of Middle-earth, although I do quite like that they've made the goblins slightly bigger and angrier than you would have normally thought of them, which I think is quite nice. And they sort of stand apart a little bit from the look of the Peter Jackson goblins, but not so far away that they're not Tolkien-esque, which I think is quite nice. You've also got some really awesome characters on the back of wolves and all that kind of thing. So if you wanted to make a sort of warg-based army, then you could do that as well, which I think is quite nice. The reason that I'm talking about all of these, though, is that I want you to look at these and then think of using them as alternatives to play the game of Middle-earth strategy battle game for Games Workshop, because the scales are the same in 28mm, and you could just pick these up and use them to make your warbands. They wouldn't be legal for you to take to Warhammer World or play in official tournaments or anything like that, but I think these are a really, really nice range that deserves a little bit of attention. And because it's Tolkien-esque in its look and feel and style, very much going back towards kind of like old school artwork of the books and things, I think these are a really good shoe-in for that to be used as alternatives in games. They're not going to look like the ones from the movies or anything like that. You're not going to look like a Viggo Mortensen or a Orlando Bloom or anything. But I think as a whole, these models from the Oathmark range are really, really good for kind of creating Tolkien-based armies on the tabletop without specifically going for something Games Workshop-based tied in with the movies. So yeah, they also do a really awesome dragon that would be a fantastic Smaug. I think that's a really good version of a really badass Drake, which is wingless, as you might imagine, which is kind of cool. And would make a very fun Smaug if you painted him up in glittering reds and golds. I think that would be really awesome. You've even got 3 trolls, so if you wanted to do Bilbo fighting off against the trolls alongside the rest of Thorin's company, you could do that, which I think is quite nice. And I love that they made them in 3s, which is really cool. I'm just going to go back to the dwarves again because I don't think we really had a look at their characters. So here you go, here's some Dwarf Heroes. Use those to lead the way. Use them to make up some of Thorin's company if you wanted to. I think that's a pretty cool sort of Thorin style model if you wanted to. Use him as use one of the metal models instead of just one of the plastics. And then you've got like the really cool rook on the back there as well. So you've got your rook in the makes as well. I also want to go into the humans, just show off some of the characters they've done for them. So you do have mounted characters, which is cool. So you can use those as your Rohirrim on the tabletop. Use those as your sort of mounted horsemen of the plains. And again, it would just be the case of just swapping these shields out for round ones. And away you go, really. You've got Gondorians and you've got Rohirrim at the same time, I think. So kind of cool, especially you've got things like the Hornblower and that kind of stuff as well, which is really nice. Another range from the folks at North Star I think is really good for those looking to pick up some very character figures, especially if you're going to be playing something like Battle Companies, is the Rangers at Shadow Deep range. So this is a really fun range that was put together by North Star. for another one of McCullough's games. You'll notice that there's quite a theme with a lot of the miniatures we're seeing here. But they have a fantastic range that I think would be really fun for those people who are trying to do ranger-based parties within the world. So if you're going to be trying to do your Dunedain and that kind of thing, I think their collection is very good for that. You've got sort of like your Aragorns there, maybe take the head out of his hands, although, Aragorn was a fairly gruff individual. Maybe change the sword for something a little bit more regal, if you were trying to make him look like the Strider of later on in the books, the Aragorn rather than the Strider, I guess you'd say. But yeah, I think these are really fun to use as Dunedain in your games, and they'd be really nice stand-ins. You've also got things like the Shadow Knight there. There would be a really cool alternative Ring Wraith, I think, for you to use in your games. But yeah, Rangers of Shadow Deep is a range that I think you should definitely go and have a look at if you're interested in picking up some interesting and sort of alternative models for use as hero characters in your games, which is pretty nice. So yeah, make sure to go check those out. Some cool stuff there. We're actually then going to move to a company that actually does do official Middle-earth miniatures. It's not just Games Workshop who do official Middle-earth miniatures, and that is Mithril. So Mithril make miniatures for Middle-earth based on the books, not the movies. So let's just click on this one and have a look at this, shall we? So they do metal miniatures in 28mm, maybe closer to 32, based on vignettes, moments, dioramas, and of course just standard character models for you to use on the tabletop if you're going to be playing games set in Middle-earth. Maybe you want one of the Blue Wizards. Maybe you want an alternative take on Radagast Brown. Maybe you want to get yourself a Gandalf with Gwaihir. Maybe you want the Mouth of well, that's actually Lord of the Rings is Sauron, which is kind of cool there. You've got Saruman there with his Crowbane, which is kind of nice as well. Gandalf on Shadowfax, which is nice. Now, obviously, these folks have been around for a while, and their stuff is reasonably priced, I think you'd say. But it has a distinct style to it. It's a lot more old school than you would normally have thought when it comes to Middle-earthy style miniatures. But like, for example, that's their take on Grimbeorn there. All of their hobbits have a slightly cherubic look to them, which I think is sort of in line with some of the older artwork and that kind of thing as well. But you've got folks like Tom Bombadil in the mix as well. Frodo sitting at Avon Hen. Gollum in a little fishing boat. An elven flautist, if you wanted a flautist. A whole bunch of others here. We got Belladonna Took, Pippin, a wise woman, Lossoth the wise woman, a Haradan and the Mummakil, the Dunedain Ranger with a hawk, just a dwarven scribe, Galadriel in her terrible aspect visage. It's kind of awesome. I love this one. It's Aragorn with the Palantir, gazing into it, looking very cool indeed. Now, obviously, again, these are much older styled miniatures compared to some of the new stuff, so it'll very much be a down to the tastes of the individuals. But I think these are really cool. I think they're pretty fun if you're looking to pick up a miniature or two. As you can see, this is what it looks like in good old British pounds. £19 for a character figure, not too bad in 32mm scale, based on the book rather than anything else. I think that's quite nice. You've also got your sets of the Fellowship, so there's their take on Gandalf. There's Boromir, Strider, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and then each of the hobbits there. So I think that's Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin there. Again, very much going for that kind of like angelic cherubic face, but here you can see how the models look when you get them out of the set. They're not going to blow anybody away by any means, I don't think, but I think they're a really fun little set of models that you could use for alternative games on the tabletop, which is quite nice. You've also got the Hobbit set as well, so you've got Bilbo Baggins, Thorin the Dwarf and Gollum. Then you've got Elrond of Rivendell, Gandalf the Wizard, Beorn, the Elven King Thranduil, the Great Goblin, and then the Master of Lake Town as well, which is kind of nice. So you've got a really nice set of characters there once again for you to use in your games, if you were so inclined to do so. So a couple more options that I want to go through before we wrap things up. So we have also got Ragnarok Miniatures, and this is us looking at things in 28mm scale. So they have only very recently arrived on the scene with a bunch of really cool metal miniatures. And here we have some really awesome goblins. So I think these would be really good if you were trying to make actual goblins that look a little bit more in the goblinoid way, you know, that goblin sort of shape and form and that kind of stuff, and poses and things. So you've got sort of like cave goblins, forest goblins, night goblins, more night goblins, and then armored goblins as well. So you could use those as sort of like your more, you know, your Moria-based stuff. Use those as goblins that are dwelling down in like Goblin Town. Use those as trackers that are hunters, used by the forces of Sauron and that kind of thing as well. So you've got a really nice selection of different models there, I think, to choose from. They have also got the Dvergr. So you've got a bunch of dwarves there. A lot of the stuff that they've recently released actually for the dwarves, I think, is more in line with what you'd probably want to use when it came to putting together cool Middle-earth style armies. But I think these would look really good as dwarves on the tabletop, as you might have imagined. They've even recently done Draugr as well. So if you're going to be making an army of the dead, then there you go. You've got some more options there as well, which I think is quite nice. All of it slightly more Norse themed, which I think is quite nice. Because obviously that ties into the way that Tolkien saw a lot of this stuff, which is quite cool. If you were looking for something entirely different, then I would also recommend looking at the Cobblestone Castings collection. So Cobblestone Castings do 10mm Middle-earth miniatures, although they're not strictly Middle-earth, they're just called Halflings and Heroes. So here's just a selection of some of the different models they have close up, and then we'll have a quick look at their web store. So here is the Halflings and Newman collection. So here's your Fellowship of the Ring. So you've got an Aragorn, a Strider, a Frodo and a Sam, or a Frodo and a Sam, and a Merry and a Pippin. You've got a Boromir type character, or you could use him as Boromir. You've got Legolas, you've got Gimli with a double-handed axe and an armour on. Then you've got the other two. So you've got Merry and Frodo and Sam there. There's another Boromir type character if you wanted to go give him an axe, which I think is kind of cool. And then you've got Gandalf there. I think he'd be kind of good as like a Beorn, perhaps. And then there's the Boromir that's more in keeping, I think, with the look of the character from the movies. Use them to make your Fellowship, as I have done. I might do a little video showing off those later on as well, which is kind of cool. But so you can see there's your heroes, and then you have Rohan, including heroes on horseback. Boom. That's all your different characters there, riding into battle. There's your sort of Lady Eowyn. There's your Legolas. It's kind of cool. You've got Gandalf on the back there. You've got like a mounted captain, Rohirrim, so you can use your sort of Eomer's and your Eomer's, Eowyn's, Dernhelms, that kind of thing. All the things you kind of want to use when you're charging to battle. You've got a set of 10mm rangers if you wanted to do Gondor, and that's where the City Spearmen come in. So you've got the City Spearmen there, kicking ass and taking names in 10mm. And then you've even got a set of dwarves at the same time as well. So however you were going to be doing a army on the tabletop, based on the armies that would have actually fought during the Lord of the Rings, really, especially tied into the movies, you tend to just see basically a lot of the humans, don't you, really? The Rohirrim and the Gondorians. Théoden, that's the other name I was thinking of. But yeah, so you've got some nice options there in 10mm. You've even got everything for the other side as well. So you have your 10mm orcs, which we showed off here. I'll just show them off again. A little bit looking very, very cool. Even there with a little Eye of Sauron on their model, which is quite nice. So you've got your 10mm orcs. I think you get quite a few of these. So you get one command strip and 5 warrior strips. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you get 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 orcs. You could have them all on these strips if you wanted to. If you wanted to play something like the Battle of Five Armies rules, or use Warmaster, or you could even snip them individually and play very, very tiny scale 10mm skirmishes on the tabletop. That made me think, that was so amazing that it made me go, oh, cough. So yeah, some really cool stuff for your evil armies there. With 10mm orcs, you got your half orcs with spears, if you do goblins, half orc archers, war trolls, looking very cool there. Half orcs with swords, orc wolf riders as well, so you can do the ambush from the wargs. Orc archers there, looking very nice. Just a set of dire wolves. So if you want to throw those into the mix, you could. And then here's all of your evil characters as well. So one of the nice things about this is that it comes with a bunch of really cool characters for making larger scale games on the tabletop. So you have your Nazgul on the back of a Fell Beast, a Ring Wraith mounted there. You've got your Warg leader, an Orc blowing a horn on the back of a Warg, another Warg leader, and another sort of Warg banner bearer. There's your Saruman. There's your Orc command units. You could use him as sort of like a Lurtz style character, sort of like a leader of your Uruk-hai, depending on how you painted him. Same for those as well, really. Basically, all of the evil army stuff would wear it really nice as goblins, orcs, or Uruk-hai, I reckon, depending on what you were going to be doing. So yeah, some really cool stuff there. So yes, that kind of caps everything off that I wanted to show you when it came to alternative miniatures, both in 28mm and in 10mm, when it came to playing Middle-earth on the tabletop. I hope this has given you some ideas. Sorry my voice was going a little bit there, but that's just the way things are at the moment, unfortunately, with hay fever and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, some really fun options there, I think, for people to consider when it comes to playing games like the Middle-earth strategy battle game, but without using the Games Workshop models, without paying that kind of premium that you get for paying for those. And obviously these sculpts are a lot more up to date than most of the Middle-earth range. It all really depends on how you feel about the aesthetic of the films, the aesthetic of these models, and how you interpret Tolkien on the tabletop. But the main thing to remember is that the Middle-earth strategy battle game is a very, very good game, and it's 28mm, so you are just essentially hamstrung by what miniatures you want and feel you can use on the tabletop. And I think these are really good options, especially the Oathmark collection. I just want to finish things off, because I always tend to overrun in these videos, but I just want to finish things off with a look at some stuff from the Renaissance Troll. So this is Joseph McCullough. He was the author of games like Oathmark, Rangers Shadow Deep and all that kind of thing. But he has a bunch of stuff on his blog where he shows off painting up Middle-earth miniatures. So here we have Bombadil and Goldberry. That's actually one of the Mithril miniatures there, as you can see. And Goldberry comes from Reaper. And they paint it really nicely. It just shows what you can use some really fun stuff to make Middle-earth miniatures that don't have to come from Games Workshop, which is really cool. There's a Gandalf and a Saruman that are actually based on Reaper miniatures once again from Bobby Jackson, which is really cool. There's a alternative version of sort of Aragorn made using that model that we showed you earlier, and there's an old Golem from a classic Citadel range, which is kind of cool. But there's Strider with his bow and sword in hand, using one of the Rangers Shadow Deep models that's been tweaked a little bit. And then here you go. Here's a really awesome fellowship that's been, or part of a fellowship anyway, that has been put together by Joe to use in his own games. So there's his Gandalf. There you've got sort of Merry and Pippin, I think. You've got your Boromir with the White Tree of Gondor there. Aragorn, Sam, Legolas, and Gimli off to the side, which I think is really nice. And yeah, just shows that you can have a lot of fun with lots of different miniatures out there and bring together some really awesome collections for Middle-earth gaming on the tabletop that aren't just tied into Games Workshop ranges, which is really cool. So hopefully this has given you something to think about, giving you some inspiration. It'd be really fun to hear what you folks have been up to, and sort of when it comes to building warbands. Do you use alternative miniatures, or do you use the official stuff from Games Workshop tied into the New Line and Peter Jackson movies? I'm going to be moving on, diving into some more videos very, very soon. Maybe some painting stuff in the near future would be pretty cool. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there, and I'll be back with you folks in another video very soon. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and do all that good stuff down in the comments. It's all very awesome, and hopefully we can get to 500 subscribers very soon, so I can open the community tab on my channel and put in some pictures and all kind of things like that, and keep you folks updated with what I am up to. And then you can comment down below as well, and we'll get a little bit of a conversation going. But yeah, let me know what you think of my choices. Were these awesome, or were they not? I think that's a pretty awesome way of representing Smaug on the battlefield, for example. Dive in, let me know in the comments, and we'll keep everything ticking over, and I'll be back next week with another video. I'm just going to look up to the side and get ready to stop the recording. Bye for now.